This is a Fox News Latino exclusive with Florida Senator Marco Rubio. Senator, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Juan. Thank you.
Senator, there are several issues of concern to the Latino community, and number one may be the fact that 90% of them support passage of a DREAM Act that would allow children who have grown up in this country, who are in school, who serve in the military, a pathway to becoming American citizens. And yet, the Congress has blocked this. You oppose it. Why?
Well, I think there's 90% support for the concept of helping young kids that were brought in this country through no fault of their own, have grown up here their entire lives, are academic achievers or want to serve in the military and would like to stay in the United States legally. There's 90% support for that among Latinos. I think there's 90% support for that among the American people, that concept. The DREAM Act itself has problems that has led to that opposition. The first problem with the DREAM Act is we can't get 60 votes for it in the Senate. So that right away, in a person that has to operate in the process, if we want to get something done, I have to have 60 votes. There's a lot of things I want to get done that I can't get 60 votes for. The second thing is that the DREAM Act itself has certain things that lead to that opposition. For example, it would allow for chain migration. So not only are the kids going to be helped, but they could use that position to then bring in their relatives, and that could be 3-4 million people. So that raises red flags. So here's what I think we should do. We should figure out a way to accommodate them, and there are ways to do that, and we're actively working for ways to do that that gets us to 60 votes, whether it's a visa process that legalizes them and wouldn't prohibit them in the future from accessing the citizenship process, but it wouldn't give them a pathway to it specially carved out. These are all options that are going to be on the table, and that I'm willing to discuss and work with anyone to help accomplish. What I have found, unfortunately, in my time here in Washington is that this is a very powerful issue, and that, in fact, there are those that maybe don't want to solve this, but would like to leave it there so they can use it in the elections.
You're saying Democrats?
Sure.
Well,
absolutely.
But are you also saying that you then, in principle, support the DREAM Act?
No, I support the idea behind the DREAM Act, which is to help these young kids. I don't support the DREAM Act as currently drafted because it allows for chain migration, because it creates a pathway to citizenship that could potentially encourage illegal immigration in the future. I do support, and I have consistently supported, even during my campaign, I supported the notion that we need to help accommodate these kids who, through no fault of their own, find themselves in this legal limbo. But we have to do it the right way. And so I am actively engaged in working with my colleagues and with outside groups and conservative groups and anyone who will work with me to craft a solution that helps deal with this issue but doesn't do it in a counterproductive way.
Well, does that distance you from the majority of Latinos in America?
No, I think the majority of Latinos in America look at this issue the way the majority of Americans do and say, I'll give you a perfect example. We have the case of a young girl in South Florida who came to this country when she was 4 years old on her mother's tourist visa. Her mother returned to, she's grown up here her whole life. Her mother returned to Colombia for medical care, which means the visa expires and she's out of status. The problem is this young girl is the valedictorian of her high school. She has a 6.6 GPA, and she has Ivy League schools that want and encouraging her to come and study. She wants to be a molecular biologist. Our policy can't be to deport her. If she could dunk a basketball or if she can throw a 90-mile-an-hour fastball, we're going to keep her. But if she's a valedictorian, we're going to deport her. So the American people, Republicans, Democrats, conservatives, they look at a case like that and say, you're right, it makes no sense. We've got to figure something out. And what I want to do is figure something out to help people like her in that situation that's bipartisan, that unites us, that can get to 60 votes, but that doesn't have some of the problems that the DREAM Act, as currently drafted, has.
Let's move on then to general immigration reform. Republicans have stood in the way of immigration reform, said they don't want to approve anything that could be interpreted as amnesty. Where do you stand on immigration reform, given that your party has become viewed as antagonistic to helping people create a pathway to citizenship?
I think, the first thing I think the party needs to be, and what I hope to help it become once again, is the pro-legal immigration party. We have a broken legal immigration system. We need to recognize that our legal immigration system is broken and that the broken legal immigration system is contributing to illegal immigration. Part of the problem that we have with illegal immigration in this country is that the American people don't trust the federal government. They've seen this problem get worse. A decade ago, this issue of illegal immigration may have bothered people, but it wasn't the issue that it's become now because people have watched it be unaddressed, they've watched it be demagogued, and they've watched it get worse. So I think we have to make a real commitment to both border security and employment security. And let me be fair. I think that border security has improved, but it has a ways to go. That's why I support an electronic verification system. That's why I support an E-Verify bill. It doesn't have to be my idea. I'm open to other people's ideas about how to do that. I think step two, and it could happen right afterwards, is a reform of the legal immigration process. In essence, a modernization of our visa programs that are broken and antiquated. And as part of that, by the way, a guest worker program. There are a lot of people in this country that are illegally here and out of status that don't want to permanently live here, but they're afraid to leave because if they do, they can't come back next year when they're needed. I think if we can do those things, if we can improve border security and workforce security, and also modernize our legal immigration system, then I think it's going to make it a lot easier to deal with the millions of people that are in this country in an undocumented
The argument
status.
comes from President Obama that we have now more boots on the ground on the U.S. border. We have more electronic surveillance of the border. That border security is tighter than it's ever been.
And as I said a few seconds ago, I believe that border security has improved. I think there's some things we can still do in certain sectors, for example, the Tucson sector, but it has improved. We're headed in the right direction there as long as we continue
Well, I
to
think
head
so, and I
in the
think
right direction.
many people would say, you know, there's a confusion here between drug gangs and drug dealers and people who emigrate
Yes.
here because they want opportunity, economic, educational opportunity.
Well, and that's the vast majority. And I've always said that, too, as I've said
Well,
repeatedly.
then why is it that you would stand in with Republicans and not offer an alternative vision, a program that you said, here's what we as Republicans should support?
Well, the bottom line is I am, and I'm starting with the kids, the ones who are in that situation, and that's why I'm working on that. By the way, I have offered and have supported ideas about, for example, the Kyle McCain plan on the border security, the E-Verify bills that have been offered, and I do want to work on visa reforms and modernization of the visa programs, and this is what I believe. I believe that if we modernize our legal immigration system, if we create a guest worker program, and if we continue to improve on security, that then it will never be easy. But it will be easier to deal with the issue of those that are in this country illegally. Now, I don't have a magic solution for that problem because it's a difficult one. And I'll tell you why, Juan. This is very real. In my office especially, I see just as many people who are doing it the right way, who have waited for years to come to this country legally, who have applied, who have paid, who have done all the things they need to do. And my answer to them can't be, well, why don't you do it illegally because it's faster and cheaper?
No. But I mean, gosh, Ronald Reagan advocated immigration reform in his time, and yet Republicans today are unable to put on the table, and you haven't put on the table a bill that says here
I've been here 12 months.
Right, but there's nothing on the table.
Well, I understand, but we're working on putting something on the table. But here's what's happened in the past to put something on the table is it becomes an issue. You've got to be careful how you do it, because I don't support amnesty. I don't support something that undermines legal immigration. I'm not going to support something that tells people who are doing it the right way that the cheaper and better way to do it is the wrong way. And I'm not going to do something that's not going to pass and sets us back like the 07 debate.
Well, that makes sense. But why is it that you support someone like Jan Brewer, the governor of Arizona?
Well, I've never met Jan Brewer.
But you support the idea, the kind of law that they put in place, which, again, Latinos across the country, Latino Americans, find offensive.
I have a record on that issue as well, and it's very straightforward. I don't believe that the Arizona law is a model for our country. I don't believe the Arizona law belongs in Florida, and I don't think other states should copy it. I'd rather the federal government deal with it. But what I've said about the Arizona law is, A, I believe the state of Arizona has a constitutional right to pass it. Right. Number two, what I've said about the Arizona law is that I understand why people in Arizona feel the way they do, because they don't have an immigration problem as much as they have an all-out drug war on the other side of the border. And by the way, I'm a big believer in what President Calderon is doing in Mexico. He's taking on these issues. But when you take on drug gangs, they fight back, and it creates this violence. And we need to be supportive of their efforts like we were in Colombia. But my point is that the people of Arizona were responding to an issue that went beyond just immigration in terms of their border security. They felt insecure about it, and they dealt with it through their state legislature.
But you understand that if people who are Latinos, in fact, people of color, generally felt this meant that if you had an accent, if you are a person of color, if the police would have the right to harass you.
But I don't believe that law, although it may be right for Arizona and the people of Arizona supported it through their legislature or what have you, I don't think that law should be a model for the rest of the country. I've said that consistently. I don't think Florida needs that law. What I think that law is a wake-up call for the federal government to begin to do its job on both security and modernization. And unfortunately, what I have seen in this effort is that in 07, when the immigration reform law was put forward, it set us back. It set the process back. It set the issue back. And what most disturbs me about the immigration debate is that for so long immigration has been a source of unity for our nation and our people. Right. Now it's become a source of division. We used to brag about the fact that we were a nation of immigrants. Now we're fighting about it.
Well, that's right. And you want to get us to do something, but again, I think people are putting pressure on you to produce. Now let me ask about Mitt Romney, who says he wants self-deportation. Mitt Romney, the frontrunner, the likely Republican nominee, has taken the harshest position of any of the Republican candidates on immigration reform. Are you ready to endorse Mitt Romney?
Well, I'm endorsing Mitt Romney because I think he's going to be a much better president than Barack Obama is. On the issue that you've outlined, I think what Mitt Romney would say, and he needs to, obviously he has spoken on that issue and he can tell you more in depth about what he feels. But here's what I believe. I believe that the United States of America needs a legal immigration system that works. We need to have a guest worker program that's where people get a tamper-proof ID when they enter the country. They work for a defined period of time. When their work is over, they can go back to their country. There are hundreds of thousands of people in this country illegally that would avail themselves of that program if it existed. I think that this country needs to have legal immigration reform, visa reform.
Well,
our visa program is broken. And I think if you had those issues in place, you will be shocked at how much of the illegal immigration problem would begin to disintegrate.
Under Mitt Romney's plans, there is no pathway to citizenship. He's talking about self-deportation. Do you consider that realistic?
But the pathway to citizenship is to apply to enter through the legal immigration process.
Well, it's going to break down. I mean, we have 12 million illegal immigrants in the country.
Well, the pathway to citizenship is to legally immigrate to the United States. And what I've said to you tonight is the way to do that is broken. It has to be reformed.
Correct.
And that's why you reform the legal immigration system. And that's what I'm talking about doing. I'm saying if we reform the legal immigration system and deal with the security issues, all of a sudden a lot of these illegal immigration problems become easier to tackle.
Well, here's a question for you. Rick Perry, who was running for president, governor of Texas, advocated in-state tuition for illegal immigrants. The other Republican candidates opposed it. Where do you stand?
Well, we had that law in Florida, and we supported the law in Florida at one time, although over time, unfortunately, it became harder to support that law because of the way the immigration process began to unravel. When I got elected to the legislature in the year 2000, this issue of in-state tuition, this issue of illegal immigration, was not a hot and heated issue. The American people are the most compassionate people in the world, and we're very open to immigration. And then this illegal immigration problem kept getting worse and worse and worse, and the people felt stronger and stronger about it, and the political space to operate began narrower and narrower. By 2006, 2007, 2008, the in-state tuition idea became impossible and, quite frankly, evolved into a bad idea because of the situation that we were facing with illegal immigration. I'm telling you that before this illegal immigration problem got out of control, these issues weren't as heated because the American people, in their heart, are pro-legal immigration.
A quarter of Latinos in the United States say that if you were on the Republican ticket, they would consider voting for the Republican Party. Are you serious about accepting a vice presidential nominee?
No, I'm not going to be the vice presidential nominee of the Republican Party, and I'm not going to be asked to be the vice presidential nominee. But let me tell you about Americans of Hispanic descent, Latinos. Their vote has to be earned on multiple issues. Clearly, the immigration issue is important because it's a personal issue. You're talking about their mother, their father, their brother, somebody they love, somebody they care about. And so clearly that issue is a critical issue. But so is economic empowerment. The vast majority of Latinos and Hispanics in this country either came here from another country or were brought here from another country because they were seeking a better life, and big government didn't work in the country they came from.
Well,
so they came
no
to the
question.
United States.
I think that, and so many of the social issues correspond to values that are emblematic of the Republican Party. But I just wanted to say to you...
But Latinos immigrate here from countries where the government dominates the economy, which is exactly what the Democratic Party offers them, is more government domination of the economy.
But you realize that on the issue we've just been discussing, immigration, that there's now more and more of a sense that the Republican Party is hostile, not welcoming to immigrants.
Well, it's hard to make an economic argument to people who think you want to deport their grandmother. Yes, it's much more difficult. But again, that goes back to the issue that why the Republican Party needs to become the pro-legal immigration party. And we have to do that because it's right for our country.
Your family story is an amazing story. But as a Cuban-American Republican, the question becomes, does it resonate with Puerto Ricans, with Mexicans, with Dominicans, or do they see you and Cuban-Americans as a separate story?
I don't know the answer to that. I can tell you who I am. Okay, my parents worked very hard. They came here because they were looking for a better life. They worked their entire life very hard so that I could have opportunities they didn't have. I can tell you about the community that helped raise me. A lot of Cuban exiles, and I'm very proud of the Cuban exile community. But my wife is of Colombian descent. All my neighbors are from all over Latin America. To me, the story of immigration, to me, the story of the Hispanic community, the aspirations for a better life, the sacrifices so that your children would have opportunities that you didn't have. I didn't read about this in a magazine article. I'm surrounded by it every single day of my entire life, whether it
You
was in
lived it.
Miami or in Las Vegas where I lived it, and back in Miami when we moved there again. My neighbors, my friends, the kids I went to school with, my in-laws, which is now half my family, these are people that lived this experience. This is not theoretical.
But there's been confusion about whether or not your family were really Cuban refugees. Will that hurt you in terms
Well, I don't know
of...
who's confused by that.
Well, obviously, you know, there's a reporter, a book coming out. You've moved up the schedule for release of your book the same day his book is coming out. The whole notion that your family didn't flee because of Castro.
Well, first of all, the bottom line is my parents came to the United States in 1956 in search of a better life.
Right.
They always aspired to return to Cuba. They wanted to, and they tried, as many Cubans did. In fact, you know, the story of immigrants is not usually a story of instant success, and there was a time in their life where they were discouraged by some of the way things were going here. The bottom line is my parents were never able to return to Cuba. That option was taken off the table. They identified as exiles. They raised us as parents that were exiles. They are exiles, and I was raised in a community of exiles. I did get the date wrong. I didn't know. As soon as I knew, I stopped saying the wrong date. It doesn't change the fundamental aspects of my story.
What about reaction you're getting from fellow Latinos? Not just
On what
Cubans.
issue?
On this issue of, well, did my family really come here as
no
refugees?
one other than the reporters bring that up to me.
Nobody but
I have never
reporters.
had a single person other than the reporter raise that issue to me.
That's revealing. All right. One element of the story also is that for a time you were raised as a Mormon. I think most people didn't know this. How many Latino Mormons do we have in America?
I don't know the answer to that. I was 8 years old, and obviously when you're 8 years old, you do what your parents tell you to do, which is, by the way, one of the reasons behind the DREAM Act, right? And behind the concept of the DREAM Act, when you're 8 years old, you go where your parents take you.
Right.
Our parents took us from Miami to Las Vegas and back, and it's not something we hide from. I mean, it's not, the bottom line is it was an episode in our life when I was very young, and we've not, you know, it'll be more fully discussed in the book. You have to buy the book.
I have to buy the book. But you are not a Mormon now.
No.
Now, when people look at you, Marco Rubio, and hear you say, I will not be vice president, I will not accept this nomination, they think, why?
Well, first of all, I ran to be a United States Senator, and I'm a United States Senator from the state of Florida it's a big state with a lot of diverse issues that need to be confronted in Washington, D.C., here in this city, and I'm focused on that job, and I think that's where I can best serve our nation right now, and that's what I'm focused on.
Jeb Bush, former governor of Florida, has said you're his pick, and he's also endorsed Romney.
Yeah, he's my pick. I want Jeb Bush to be vice president. How's that?
But you seriously are holding to this line, you will not accept it.
I'm not going to be the vice president nominee because I'm focused on my job in the Senate. I mean, that's where my mind is. That's where my heart is. That's what I want it to be.
What if it's the difference between winning and losing for
Republicans?
Republicans?
I mean, that's, first of all, always these hypothetical questions are dangerous, and it isn't going to be the choice between winning or losing. You don't win or lose a presidential race on the vice presidential pick. You win or lose on the competing visions for the future of our country. And I think we Republicans have an opportunity to offer a very clear contrast to the direction that Barack Obama has taken and wants to continue to take the United States.
And you think that vision, that contrast in visions, can be sold to Latinos in America?
Oh, absolutely. Especially all the communities in America, none understand economic empowerment and upward mobility better than the Latino community, who would live it every single day, which is the reason why they're here to begin with. And the best system in the world for upward mobility and economic empowerment is the American free enterprise system, which I would argue the Democratic agenda is undermining.
Senator Marco Rubio of Florida, thank you so much for coming on Fox News Latino.
Thank you.
I'm Juan Williams.